Welcome again to another episode of Live at the Forum, part of NOAB's Forum 2023. Today with me is Jim McShane, who is the Executive CEO of the Capital Region Workforce Development Board. Now, the reason I had to work on that a little bit is because there are a whole bunch of Capital Region workforce boards around the country. They all are in capital cities, surprise. And I grew up in Madison, Wisconsin, which is another capital. So, in this case, just so that we know what we're talking about, this is Tallahassee, Florida, and the rural areas around it. And one of the things that I'm very interested in, Jim, is the interest in how we do regionality when we have different states. And you have the great benefit of being next to two states. So some of your work goes into Georgia and some of it into Alabama. So tell me about that a little bit.
So when I first got there in 2013, I started to look at what who was traveling into my major county and who was traveling out for a job. And what I found is that people were coming from Alabama and South Georgia. In fact, quite a few coming from Thomasville into Tallahassee. So then I started to talk with the workforce boards across the state line and started to initiate a conversation about what can we do together. We have, there are places that shut down over the period that I've been here across the state line, but we would send our people over there too because half their people lived in Florida and the other half lived in Georgia. And so that's how we got started on that. We started meeting in 2015 and started to look at what are the best practices that we're doing. So I looked at this as a beginning of a community of practice.
So was it board leadership or staff leadership or
It was staff. No, it was staff.
It was staff
and the three states, we eventually ended up with Alabama on board too, are quite different in how they operate their career centers. So that was an eye-opener to me. I had to see what the difference was. In Georgia, their staff works for the Department of Labor, and that's who staffs all the career centers, and then the boards are separate from that. In our case, we actually have TANF, and we have SNAP, and we have WIOA, and Veterans, and Wagner-Pizer. So we're doing all of that under the board.
Okay. Now, if somebody in Alabama works in Florida, works in Tallahassee area, and they come into one of your centers, can they get served there?
Oh yeah, we serve.
And how do you
everyone.
register them then? Are they?
Well, let's say we're not going to probably do an ITA or put them into training. We would refer them back to our partner up in Alabama because that would be the ideal spot for them to go. Because we do have a priority of Florida residents. It doesn't mean we can't serve non-Florida residents. We are serving refugees right now too, coming through. And I've started to work with the International Refugee Committee in our area. And so we're trying to help them get jobs in our area. We got lots of jobs. We have 5,000 people that are unemployed in my three counties, and we have 10,000 job postings.
So one of the things you hear at this conference all the time is there's a shortage of both skilled workers at the top of the workforce, if you will, and folks that are in hospitality and retail with lower levels of skills, I guess you could say. Certainly lower pay in any case.
That's right.
And there's shortages across the board, and there's challenges about upskilling people, and there's concerns about the future of automation. So what do you think? You're in a university town and a capital town. So you have a highly skilled group of people, and then you have a big demand for all kinds of services to that group of people. What are your biggest challenges on these two fronts?
I'd say, especially in hospitality and restaurants, that's a big thing in a college town, and being able to staff those restaurants have been really problematic to them. But we also have issues with manufacturing, not being able to find people. We have a couple manufacturers that pay $12 an hour, but if you go work at Target, you get paid $15. So there's definitely a big difference at this point in time, and trying to inform our employers that they need to be aware of that, and they need to adjust their pricing. And You know, we had the Great Resignation last year in the springtime, and we lost 80% of our people because we're federally funded. We just cannot all of a sudden give everybody a raise because we're not getting that kind of money from the Congress.
And we need to upskill our workers all the time. And
Yes.
somebody had said in one of the sessions, we underinvest in both technology and in the development of our own staff, which is unfortunate, but you're right, there's all kinds of pressures. So how do you try to overcome some of those? Can you?
Well, we have roundtables with our manufacturers and roundtables with the IT and all our major sectors. And in those roundtables, we bring up these problems. We listen to them, what they're having trouble trying to find people, what talent. We connect them with some of our colleges and universities that teach a specific skill. I would say the one thing that's happening right now is our community college and technical school both are looking at reducing the number of hours for somebody to get a certification. It's becoming more and more skills-based, less and less your degree or a piece of paper saying you got this. It's more about can you perform. And so I see that shift starting to happen through the whole system.
There is huge interest, certainly in the U.S. Department of Labor, but I think within the workforce community as well, about getting more into work-based learning strategies. And, you know, instead of the old ITA, and we'll send them to community college or technical school and hope they work. How's that? Do you see that shift?
Oh, absolutely. We have about 80 businesses that will take our work experience people. We do that a lot in our youth program, but we also do adult experience too, work experience. And we see that as the best way to get somebody in. It's like an OJT, on-the-job training. We pay for that person during the time they're in the work experience. We'll pay up to 480 hours for a youth and 320 for an adult. So those are all things that gives the employer a chance to check these people out, see if they can do the job, train them on the way they want to, which they're going to do with whoever they hire. And when they're done, hopefully hire them at the end. And if not, we pick them up and try and find a job for them.
We've talked a little bit about all the challenges you face. Are there a few things that you really think have gone well that you're proud to sort of yell about in the community? Hey,
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things that I started in 2015 in that discussion across the state line is we started an alliance between, at that time, 4 workforce boards. And we started meeting both in Tallahassee and Valdosta, Georgia, and started to share our ideas and what we can do better, and we started to learn things from each other. That eventually grew to where we picked up Savannah and we picked up Jacksonville, and then we picked up the center part between Jacksonville and North Florida, and then we finally got Alabama involved about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And because Alabama got involved, we got one more CareerSource out of Mariana involved too. So we now have 9 workforce boards. As of today, we are now a 501c3, official by the IRS. I got the letter today. So very happy with that. It means that we can go out and look for funding and start working with Department of Labor and hopefully Region 3 on how we can keep this moving forward and helping our mostly younger generation that are leading these other workforce boards to be able to be better at what they're doing and share our information.
You're saying you and I aren't part of that younger group that are running things?
Well, I'm
I
sure
don't
not.
know.
I'm 2 years from retiring, so.
Can't retire, I guarantee you. But
yeah.
when I look at it, that's, there's sort of 2 trends. One is to move to broader regionality, and that's what you're doing
Right.
with this nonprofit.
Yes.
And the other one is to focus in on very low income communities. So
Correct.
Can you do both?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had a study done by EDSI in 2019, 2020, and that told us that we really could do it, especially in distribution, logistics, that area. Manufacturing is another area that will accept people that maybe have a record or something, and so is construction. So we're proposing to the state of Georgia's workforce board that we start to do something in that area and really focus on how we can get more people to get out of staying at home and getting a job, because there's a whole lot of folks that they have the skills, but they might be disabled, they might have been justice involved, they might have other issues, and we're trying to make sure that those folks get considered when they're looking for some talent, because there's a lot of talent there.
And for sure, we're looking at all the shortages in workers. The only way to answer it is to increase the supply of labor. And I'm not, that's your challenge, I think, one of your challenges.
Oh, it absolutely is. I read the demographic drought by Lightcast about 2 years ago now. Changed my whole mind about where we're at. So we've lost 1 million people to COVID. We had another, besides the 2 million boomers retiring, we had another 1.2 million in additional that retired. We have people dying 100,000 a year from drugs. I mean, we need people in our country to come in and staff these jobs, and immigration is certainly going to be one of the solutions. It won't cover everything, but it gets down to the fact that every couple in this country for the last 30 or so years have not had 2.2 kids as an average. We're down to 1.6, which means we're way below that at this point.
Well, immigration is going to be a workforce challenge going forward, but a real opportunity. I would view it as
I think it is. I mean, the
opportunity.
people I'm seeing coming through the refugee program have PhDs, have master's degrees. These are people that are quite qualified to be able, once they learn English, to be able to do a good job.
And even after that, I look at all the money that's in the IRA, all the money that's in the infrastructure bill, all the money that's in the CHIPS Act, and the environmental money. And I say, none of that will work unless we can produce a labor force to do that work. And
Absolutely.
That's a huge challenge, whether you're in rural Florida or you're in Atlanta. I mean, it's the same challenge.
It's the same challenge all the way through.
You're going to put electric charging stations all through your rural neighborhoods. You need some electricians.
Yeah, you do, and they're short.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of construction going on in our state capital right now. And we've had like 5 new hotels in the last year and a half go up. They're struggling just not only for the hotels to get staff, they're struggling for the construction companies to get it.
Well, let me close with an open-ended question. We've sort of, Florida is obviously one of the biggest states. And,
third biggest.
And it has 20-some workforce boards, as I recall. And a couple of counties are being moved into other counties, but that's pretty small potatoes if you think about the size of the state. So have something good to say about the state of Florida before we finish.
Yeah, well, we are considered in the national view, as you know, as one of the top 2, Texas and Florida. Why? Because we have integrated welfare transition and SNAP, which means they have to come in and they have to find a job or be volunteered in some place in order to maintain their benefits. And everybody that walks through our door is looking for a job. And so our goal is to serve each one of those folks as best we can. And our state does a great job on that. We all work together. When a hurricane comes through, we have different parts of our system send people down there to help out. We do a lot of things as a group, and we're really hanging tight together, and we're good.
Well, that's great. I've known you, Jim, for a long, long time. It's a pleasure to talk with you. And I did forget to say who I am, so I'll close by saying I'm Bob Knight. I work for Equus Workforce Solutions. I'm Director of Government Policy and Workforce Policy. Thank you all for joining us.